Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
Oh, okay.
I got 4.
All right, you got 4. All right, then we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the November. No, all right.
Thank you.
Take 2. All right, welcome to the Wednesday, November 20th board meeting of the Sioux Falls Parks and Recreation Board, and we will begin as always with the roll call and determination of quorum.
Lorraine Lindquist,
Here.
Jim Stavanger,
Here.
Ann Noctigal, Todd Sundley,
Here.
Mike Begeman,
Here.
Nick Conlon, he's absent, Rick Weber,
Here.
thank you.
Okay.
We do have a quorum, right?
Thank you. You've all received the minutes from the October 16th, 2019 meeting. They have been distributed. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes? And if not, is there a motion to approve?
So move. Second.
Okay. It has been moved by Mike and seconded by Jim. A roll call vote, please.
Lindquist,
Yes.
Stavanger,
Yes.
Sundley,
Yes.
Begeman,
Yes.
Weber,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, it's at this point in our meeting that we invite public comment, but if you were here for one of the agenda items, we just ask that you reserve your comments until that agenda item is reached. But in the meantime, if we could go around and just introduce yourself and tell us why you might be here for the meeting today.
Sky Smothers, Parks and Recreation. Mike Patton, Parks and Rec.
Diane Gildemaster, Executive Director with Mary Jo Wagner, Arboretum, and on the agenda.
David Locke, landscape architect with Stockwall, and we're here to present the Yankton Trail Park Master Plan.
Leah Muller with Stensland Family Farms, and we're on the agenda.
All right, great. And Rita said that everyone had signed in, and there are extra agendas if anyone needs one too. We can distribute those at this time. We will move on to the report of the standing committees, marketing and public needs. Mike or Rick, anything to add? Is everything on the agenda
I think
today?
everything's on the agenda from my perspective.
Okay, all right. Park system planning and development, all items are on the agenda, with the exception of, we did discuss the potential outside uses and fees to use the levee. And partnerships and recreation.
Did not meet.
Okay, all right. There is no unfinished business, so we are going to move right into new business. The first item is the Midco Aquatic Center concessionaire agreement in the sky.
Thank you. As you guys are aware, we did issue an RFP this past summer for the concession services for the Midco Aquatic Center, and that was due to our current concessionaire. They're having a growing family, so they chose not to renew at this time. So I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank Brian and Kelly for their concession services that they've provided us at the Midco Aquatic Center. But we're here today to talk about the agreement with Stensland Family Farms, and this is to provide concession services at the Midco Aquatic Center starting January 6th, 2019. This is a 2-year agreement with an option for a 3-year renewal. The city would receive 8% of gross receipts. Stensland's would be the exclusive food and beverage provider inside the Midco Aquatic Center, except during those swim meets that utilize the hospitality rooms. The responsibilities for Stensland's are to provide quarterly financial statements, including total of gross receipts, excluding taxes, set the business hours, but then those also would be approved by the director of Parks and Recreation, but are most beneficial to patrons. Responsible for staffing during the business hours, also to comply with all local, federal, and state laws. They would need to comply with all sponsorship agreements, including the naming rights to the Midco Aquatic Center. They would be responsible for the repair and maintenance of all their assets, and also to be responsible to ensure the concession premises are clean. Our responsibilities for City of Sioux Falls would be obviously to have the right to enter those premises at all times. We provide the utilities. We do provide limited cleaning supplies, provide some janitorial and custodial services, except for the concession premises. We would also pre-approve all social media and websites associated with the concession services. We'd obviously coordinate with the delivery and schedule of inventory as necessary to carry out their operations. So Leah Muller and Mark Stensons are here representing Stenson's Family Farms. If there's any additional questions, at this point, staff does recommend approval.
Thanks. Any questions or comments?
I've got a question for Sky. Sure. Remind us, that's in the, is there a kitchen? What does that look like there? I've forgotten what that is.
Yeah, it's basically like a caterer's kitchen. I mean, there's kind of some food prep stuff there, but there is no hood. So there's no grilling of burgers, any of that stuff. So it's just your basic kind of food prep catering type facility. There'll be some refrigerators, that they'll be bringing in with whatever provider that they're using for their beverage. It's typically associated with concessions, but it's just your basic equipment.
So are the items pretty comparable to what we had prior, and then what about the prices? Are they pretty comparable as well?
Yeah, let's see, I don't know if I didn't bring that with me, but, the prices, yeah, in front of you there are pretty comparable. The neat thing here is they're gonna be, offering a different array that was offered before with some salads, some sandwiches. I know they're gonna initially start their hours a little bit earlier, about 11 o'clock, to try to get that lunch crowd. So we're looking forward to working with them and providing those services.
Question for the standalone.
Yep.
Standalone folks. Is, most of the food that you're preparing, is that prepared off-site and then brought in?
On site.
You do the, I'm sorry. That's okay. So you're doing most of the food preparation on-site?
On-site, correct.
As opposed to off-site and then bringing it in?
Correct.
Okay.
Any of our ice creams or anything that we do off-site normally or is provided by the creamery, obviously, then that would be brought on-site.
Yeah,
Yep,
I was just looking
Yep.
at like the croissants and the wraps and all that stuff.
on-site.
Okay,
Yep.
that's all.
Okay.
Now that you have the mic, do you have any other comments you'd like to
I
make?
do not, thanks though.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions or comments? If not, is there a motion to approve the Midco concessionary agreement?
Second?
Okay, it has been moved by Rick and seconded by Mike, and a roll call vote, please, Rita.
Lindquist,
Yes.
Stavanger,
Yes,
Sunny,
Yes.
Spiegelman,
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank you, we are too, we appreciate it.
All right, we will move on to the next item of new business, which is the Yankton Trail Park Master Plan.
Thank you. So this was an item that we discussed briefly in the committee meetings. This was sort of a long-range planning effort we took on, started, 18 months ago when we actually began the process, and it was really to look into how to address the aging infrastructure within the park as well as maximize potential uses. So we contracted Stockwell Engineers to be the lead designer for the project, and with us today is David Locke, who was in charge of the project, and he's going to take you through a presentation here now.
The mouse is under the
There you go, Dave.
All right, thanks, Mike. Thank you, everybody. Happy to be here. So as Mike said, I'm a landscape architect with Stockwell, and we had a lot of fun working on this project. And so what we're going to do is kind of walk through the steps that we went through, and then also go over kind of the full master plan, the full long-range plan, and then maybe what are some items that could be done in the interim to kind of start things moving. So that's what we're going to go through here today. And, do you guys see okay?
Mm-hmm.
So.
My glasses weren't so dirty, I could see.
You just gotta make sure Mike picks you up.
Okay. So the steps on the screen there, the 5 steps that we went through as a part of the master planning process. First off, starting out with inventory and analysis. Very important step in the process so that we understand what you guys currently have, how it functions, what works, what doesn't work, and then that way we can address it through the plan. So we took those comments, and we'll kind of go over that here in a minute. Took those comments, developed an initial concept plan, revised that through the last couple of months, as Mike said, and then what's being presented to you here today is the final full master plan. So those are the steps that we went through as a part of this process. And as I said, inventory analysis and stakeholder input is really a big first step in terms of understanding, what are some things that work with the park, and what are some things that could be improved upon or that people don't like. So what we ended up doing is attending a lot of the major events that happen at Yankton Trail. So the year that we started this project was when the big national soccer tournament was there. So we were out there for that, observing how people use the space, you know, whether they were kind of congregating by, you know, shade and trees, or if there are different areas that they were using more than others, how the park was functioning, traffic in and out, both pedestrian and vehicular. And that's really what we analyzed for all the different events that we attended. Typical Dakota Alliance soccer night. We've been to a number of those, or I have kids that play, and so I'm out there a lot. And so being able to observe how that works, not just on one event, but throughout the season, was helpful. Also attended Jazz Fest, and then we also went to a couple of cross-country meets as well. So really getting the full gamut of uses in regards to how the park is utilized for not just soccer, but also the other special activities that happen within the park. So this is the project site. This is just kind of a diagram more so of the site. There's 21 soccer fields. Then you have the road that goes along kind of the north, circles around to the west, and then kind of comes up in the middle of the park. You have accesses on Minnesota Avenue, 57th Street, and then you have the Big Sioux River and the Greenway that really forms the south boundary of the park, and I-229, the north boundary of the park. So that's the area that we're looking at. And from an existing condition standpoint, we've numbered all the fields on here, and we've also highlighted the ones that are lighted. So the yellow indicates those are the fields that are lighted currently. And then we also, one of the elements that we wanted to make sure that we knew of what was happening was the floodway. And so the dashed line in the middle is delineated as the floodway, and that was really what happened in the fall of this year, kind of the amount of flooding that happened. And then the light blue line is the limits of the spring flood from this past year. So that shows kind of the limits of that area. So that's significant in regards to that floodway line that runs through the middle of the park. So anything south of that floodway line, so basically anything on the south end of the park, we can't do any above ground structures that would inhibit any of the flow of the river. And as you can see, I mean, this is obviously into that, but that's an important aspect of Yankton Trail Park and kind of a lot of the parks in the Sioux Falls Park system, just because we maximize, you know, the river area. So that's kind of the existing conditions. And this is the full master plan based on the comments that we received from meeting with stakeholders and what we observed as a part of attending the events as a part of Yankton Trail Park. Some of the major things that kind of the highlights of that, one of them was vehicular circulation. So right now, there's the one way on the west side of the park, which a lot of people sometimes don't get. There's on-street, or not on-street, but on Park Drive, I guess, parking where people are trying to back in and out. It's a tight space there, which creates for some unsafe situations when people are coming and going from the park. There's also a lot of traffic, you know, on Minnesota Avenue with people trying to leave or pull a left-hand turn there real quick. And so on the coming into the park on Minnesota Avenue, that would be what we envision as being a right-in, right-out intersection. And so then 57th Street intersection would be a little more accessible from coming into the park from the south. At that location, when you come into the park then off 57th, would then be a roundabout in order to keep people moving around that area. And also that roundabout provides kind of a stopping point or slowing down point as you're coming up to it from the entrance of the park, because that's also where the Greenway crosses at that location as well. So trying to, you know, group the Greenway crossing, the amount of pedestrian and bicycle traffic that happens on that with that roundabout, so now you're kind of creating a complete intersection as opposed to one that's more dominated by vehicles right now. So coming into the park on that south side with that roundabout also keeps traffic moving in that area as well, whether you're going in or you're going out. And then the loop drive would be continued all the way around the park. So right now, the drive stops kind of in the middle of the park. In the southeast portion, there's no vehicular access to. And so as a part of this master plan, what we envision is having a complete loop drive all the way around the park. And as a part of that then, eliminating the on-drive parking, eliminating that unsafe situation where you have people that are trying to park and get out. You know, they lift up the tailgate and the SUV, or mom comes behind the vehicle with a stroller to try and get things out, and you're really limited on space there. So we want to keep people parking in the parking lots where there's not as much vehicle traffic in there. So we'd have the loop drive all the way around. On the east side then, a little bit of a reconfiguration coming out along from the Minnesota entrance. So eliminating that small parking lot that's next to Minnesota and moving that a little bit further into the park and making that larger and more accessible to not just greenway users or for the bike track that's there, but also for the park. So, you know, we're eliminating parking along the edge of the park, and so we wanted to try and make up some of that difference by expanding some of the existing parking lots. And that parking lot A is what we showed as adding in that location. Parking lot B got a little bit smaller, and there was really no change to parking lot C, G, or H. As you can also see, as I'm going through this, I'm demarcating what, from a letter standpoint, the different parking lots, because that was also a comment that we received and something that we observed from a special event standpoint, is it's hard to tell people where to park when they're referencing a specific soccer field, or if for Jazz Fest standpoint, if there are certain demarcations for different lots. So as a part of the full master plan would also be updating the signage and adding some signage to the parking lots and demarcating the parking lots as A, B, C, D, E, F, G, so to speak. That way the fields are all numbered so you don't get the two confused. Signage would also be added throughout the loop drive at each of the parking lot entrances, so that again, you're starting to kind of direct people where they need to go in the complex. As you come into the facility then from Minnesota, along the park drive on the north side, that center kind of nucleus of the park is what has probably changed the most out of all of this. And so in the center of the park now is what we kind of deemed the spectator village, really kind of the championship area. That's the heart of the park. We're able to kind of maximize and expand parking lots E and F as a part of it, and add parking lot D by kind of reconfiguring that access drive through there. And so we straightened it out a little bit more so it wasn't so much at an angle. And then the beauty of that then, by having the loop drive and still having that middle connection, is that in the event of a large event, whether it's a large national soccer tournament, Jazz Fest, or any other type of large event, that middle section of roadway that connects the north to south can be closed off. And now your vehicular circulation can still happen around the park, and now within the park, it's all pedestrian friendly. You'd still be able to access, you know, parking lots D, E, and F from a vehicular standpoint from the loop drive, but that access point, that road that goes through the middle, would be shut off, so that way the whole center of the park is now pedestrian friendly, and we don't have to worry about that pedestrian vehicular conflict there in the middle. Also in that spectator village would be a larger hardscape area to accommodate additional vendors. There would be electrical in that area, water hookups, all that necessary stuff to kind of set up a championship village in that middle space. As a part of that then, we've demarcated field number 11 as potentially as the championship field. It's the field that everybody really likes to use because it has the berm that goes around it, so it gives you that stadium type effect. But also because of the berm, Parks isn't able to shift the field because you get your wear zones at the goalie areas. And so you're not able to shift the field because you're confined to the sidewalk and also to the berm in that area. So we looked at that field as potentially being a field where you could look at incorporating having a synthetic turf field in that area potentially in the future. And then also something that we've looked at is, okay, if there is the potential for some sort of an indoor facility, where could that occur? And over top of what field would that maybe work? So we've looked at that as being a part of field 13. There's a little bit more room there as opposed to kind of the other fields. We needed to keep it in the north half of the park so that we stayed out of the floodway. and we would have to raise that up. There's different design, obviously, considerations that have to go along with that, but we wanted to make sure that we were looking at where that space could happen. It's also centrally located to the Championship Village and all of the kind of the larger parking lots, so you've got that accessibility there as well. So from a numbers standpoint, we kept the number of fields the same. That was important. Just from hosting those larger tournaments, we needed to keep the 21 fields. But one of the main changes that we made is that all of them are now accessible. We want to make sure we have accessibility to all of the different parks, or all of the different elements. And so before, not all of the fields were accessible from an accessible sidewalk standpoint. And so we added a lot of sidewalk to the master plan in order to connect all of the fields together. From a parking standpoint, we did decrease a little bit from what is currently out there existing, but when it comes down to the number of spaces per field, right now there's about 75 spaces per field. That's on the high range. Typically, it's anywhere from 60 to 65 to 75, kind of in that area, 60 to 75. And so even with the decrease, we're still at 70 spaces per field, so we're still good in regards to the number of spaces that would be allocated for this size of a facility. We've added a lot of sidewalk, we've added a lot of plaza space. One of the things that I didn't address with the plan previously, it was in regards to adding some additional structures. If you kind of look at it as, okay, Yankton Trail is kind of our soccer complex, and then, let's say junior football is our football complex. Junior football has, multiple restrooms. It has now the addition of the picnic shelters, the playgrounds. And so we also wanted to look at incorporating those, elements that, if you go there as a family, like I have 2 little kids that don't play soccer, there's nothing for them to do there, when older brother and sister is playing. And so having some of those additional amenities is something we looked at plugging into the master plan as well. Adding some playground areas, some additional picnic shelters, because right now there isn't shade out there. And now with kind of the emerald ash borer and such, a lot of those trees out at the park are green ash. And so a lot of that shade cover is going to be going away that people currently utilize. And so incorporating some additional picnic shelters was also a big component. And then as a part of adding one other restroom building would be adding some maintenance space for park staff. Right now there's no maintenance space at the facility. Any maintenance that needs to happen needs to come from park headquarters or from Pasley Park, and so there's no good location at this park with the size that it is to have any maintenance, and so we wanted to add some of that to an additional restroom area. Some improvements that you don't really see on the plan, but that would be included as a part of that, would be upgrading the irrigation system and creating a looped system that has a little bit better layout to it so that it's easier to kind of zone off different areas and do maintenance on them. Lighting all of the parking lots and incorporating some additional pedestrian lighting through the main trail. That was also another comment that we got, was that once the lighting for the fields is shut down, there's no other security lighting out there. There's only 2 parking lots that are lit or lighted, and there's no kind of pedestrian lighting. And so once the lights shut off, it's dark. And if you're trying to navigate back to your vehicle or the games are getting done, that can be hard to do. And so we wanted to create a little bit safer situation for that. So, as Mike said, that's kind of our long-range vision, our long-range plan. But obviously that's probably a long ways down the road, because right now the parks, we still have the 21 fields, it functions good. So what are some items that we could do that were kind of the hot topic items from the public input, stakeholder input that we got? One of them, was accessibility. So adding sidewalk to the rest of the park, adding a sidewalk to all the fields. The asphalt paths that are there are kind of at the end of their useful life anyways, and need to be looked at being replaced. So adding sidewalk. As I said, with signage and demarcating the parking lots, that was a comment. So as a part of this, we'd look at adding signage to the different parking lots and also adding signage to light poles within the facility to demarcate the different fields. So lighting, it was a big comment as well. So lighting would be added to kind of the central spine of the park, and on those light poles would be signs for each of the fields, so it'd be easier to navigate where you're going. Even if you're driving by, you'll be able to see those signs to know where you need to go from a field standpoint. Lighting for the parking lots, as I said, and then also looking at upgrading the lighting for the fields. The 4 fields on the east side, those poles are too short for soccer lighting at night, and so they need to be a little bit higher. And they've kind of come to the point of, you know, the end of their useful life, and so the 4 fields really on the east side of the park, fields 9 through 12, would have new lights put in them as well. And then we also wanted to look at what are some options for adding some alternates to this package, which would be adding some additional picnic shelters and playgrounds to the existing restroom areas, and then also adding a little bit more hardscape area to the center part of the park. So what is shown as kind of in the middle there, adding a little bit of a piece of that championship village as a part of this first part. Oops, went backwards. So this is a graphic here that really is diagrammatic, that makes everything kind of pop, stand out a little bit more. So you can see the green sidewalks that would be added, the additional lighting of the fields, the lighting of the parking lots, and then also where some of the play structures and the picnic shelters would go. The play structures with the blue dots, picnic shelters with the orange dots, and then also the potential for adding synthetic turf and a little bit of a championship, some plaza at the center part of the park. Oh, there we go. And then this graphic here helped with the wayfinding. So now you can see, you know, where we would be adding some of the field numbers on the pedestrian lights, some upgrading of the park entrance signs, and then the pink dots are where we would add directional signage. So for fields 5 through 10, you'd turn here, and then also help to kind of locate people through the park a little bit easier. In regards to the signage, we wanted to design that in a way that ties with the park, so you can see kind of the soccer ball reference and more of that collegiate type font that's included with the Yankton Trail Park signage, and then the numbers as well. But we also wanted to pick materials that would be long lasting and wouldn't require a lot of maintenance. So we would look at utilizing weathering steel for a lot of the signage elements, utilizing concrete, and then aluminum letters on that weathering steel. Those aluminum letters really pop then when you pair it with that darker steel on the background. That weathering steel would just patina over time, so it wouldn't have to be painted, neither would the aluminum letters, so it's really, you know, a maintenance-free element that doesn't have to be painted on an annual basis. We also looked at costs. So that phase 1 cost, you know, we've got it broken down here in regards to the different elements. Total of that is approximately $2.7 million, but also breaking out some alternates on the right-hand side there with some picnic shelters or playgrounds, or the options of having some donor options of the synthetic turf or the championship village. And so this is kind of our take at what that phase 1 would look like. Obviously, understanding that this could also still be broken up into smaller phases as well as funding allows, but we wanted to kind of give you the big picture of phase 1 first off.
Could you,
Yep.
question on that
Yep.
one? The loop drive that you talked about early on in the southeast part.
Yep.
Is the cost of that in there, in that?
No, so this is just phase 1. So phase 1 didn't do anything to the driveways at all. It just did the, if I can go back now. If I use it, can I use it Can you go up? There we go. Keep going. There you go. So that one. So this is what shows phase one. So it's enhances kind of really more of the pedestrian accessibility of the park and wayfinding throughout the park. When you got into the roadway improvements in terms of eliminating the on-street parking and adding the roadway on the southeast portion, it triggered, you know, a number of different other elements. So that's kind of a big cost to add that in there. And so we wanted to look at, okay,
that's a TBD in terms of phase.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And I'm just curious about that. Sure seems like it's close to the river.
It is.
And so
It is.
any concern around our last few years and the flooding and the impact that would have on that?
It would flood. It would flood as a part of that. We would have it on the park side of the greenway, so we wouldn't have any issues from a pedestrian and vehicular standpoint. But we can't do any filling in the floodway without either going through a modification to the flood maps or certifying the fact that we're not doing any, you know, elevation or adding any grade to that area. That's still to be determined in terms of how that works out. But yeah, it would be in the floodway. It'd be right next to the river right there. So there is that opportunity there for that to flood.
Okay.
Well, that kind of leads me to the next thing. This list is a graphic here that shows phase one. Does anybody have any questions or comments in regards to phase one?
The only thing I would say for the board's benefit is this is really an idea that generated out of Rex Rolfing when he was on the city council at the time. He really, obviously, if you know Rex, he's big into soccer and is very active in that Dakota Alliance Soccer Club. And really what his hope with this master plan is what is the long-term vision for Yankton Trail Park and what is the ultimate, you know, grand build out of everything. Mm-hmm. And so realizing that, you know, obviously we don't have any funding appropriated in the CIP for Yankton Trail Park, but it's more of just of a visioning document. And then to David's point, some of those things like looping the irrigation system, you know, additional lighting, sidewalks, some of these phase one components, we think are things that we can kind of bite off as funding allows in the capital program. Mm-hmm. But as Dave also mentioned, you know, we're still hosting the regional tournaments, and so it's not necessarily broke. It's just what is the future vision for Yankton Trail Park look like? So, so if it looks like it's a little pie in the sky, that was the intent. So
how long is it before we're at risk for not hosting some of those larger events there because of the facilities, in your estimation?
Oof. I'd say the big thing with hosting those types of events is the number of fields. And as you saw on there, we made sure to keep the same number of fields as what you guys currently have. I don't know that there's anything. I think some of the, you know, especially on the east side, you know, that restroom is getting to be pretty old. And so looking at upgrading that in the future could potentially be looked at. I don't think that there's anything that would actually absolutely be something where it's like, okay, this is really not working anymore. We don't want you to host a tournament. One thing of that would be, you know, probably accessibility, you know, adding the sidewalks and such like that. You know, the asphalt path through the middle is kind of starting to get beat up in different areas, especially some of the spurs that go out to the different fields. And so I'd say, you know, if there's anything in terms of, as you know, we continue to move forward on in years, would just be accessibility of the complex and making sure that there's sidewalks to all the different fields. And that's something that, you know, park staff is working on a regular basis with different items. In fact, we're doing a ADA project for you guys right now this year. So it's something that Parks is doing moving forward.
yeah, and if you remember in our capital program, we have those internal trails,
Yep.
CIP project, and so that's something that could address some of that.
Mm-hmm. But in terms of the facilities themselves, I mean, they do a great job. Park staff, Donna staff do a great job of maintaining those fields, and so
there's no critical item that's out there that's like, okay, you've got some real exposure on this.
No, there wasn't anything that really leapt off the page in terms of, God, this needs to get fixed or else we're, you know, we're gonna be in trouble, so to speak. I think it's a lot of just kind of maintaining what you got, accessibility. I know that we've talked, you know, about irrigation, you know, looking at how can we
Seems like we have
enhance
plenty
some of
of
the
water
irrigation
out
stuff. Yeah. This year it probably didn't need to be run as much, so.
Yeah, is everything back in good playing condition now?
Yeah.
After all the flooding?
Yeah, and the other, we just hosted again, so
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
so, and we get, usually when we have a national tournament, our marks are really high. You know, and a lot of it has to do with, you know, how do you support the tournament? How do you take care of the referees and the officials and the teams and the hotels? And that's a big component of this too, in addition just to the complex itself. That, you know, I think this is just make it better, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah.
And one question, fields 9, 10, 11, and 12 are the lit ones, correct?
Correct.
And on your master plan, 15 becomes another option?
Though these two fields are existing, they are lighted right now.
Also,
Yep.
so we've got 6 total then?
So right now you currently have 6, so the 15 and 17, and these 4 are currently lighted, but the quality of that in terms of, you know, the heights of the poles and the quality of the bulbs and the fixtures, need to be upgraded.
So is 6 plenty, or do we need to look at, I mean, 6 out of 21, does that hamper us from hosting?
That's
even
something
bigger?
I guess in terms of hosting bigger, I'm not sure about that, but that's something that we did talk about, you know, with the stakeholders and with staff, and, you know, talking with Dakota Alliance as well. Everyone felt that 6 is a good number right now, and that beyond that probably wasn't necessary at this point.
Yeah, I think the story behind the fields with the 4 that he's talking about, they have the shorter lights. They were intended for a softball complex and not a soccer complex. So if that's,
Yep.
Yep.
yeah.
They came from Kenny Anderson as sort of a retrofit, and they've certainly kind of served their useful life, so wanted to make sure when we go forward, we're using the right
So
system.
we use them now, but it's not.
They work.
Yeah, they work.
Yeah,
they're
They
not-
work. It's not ideal.
Yeah.
They're not up to sort of the current sports lighting standards, which have evolved a lot over the past 10 years.
And 15 and 17 are, if you go, I mean, you don't really think about it when you're out there, you know, you just think, oh, those 4, you know, 6 fields are lighted. But when you go out there and if you look at the, you know, the heights of the poles, you'll see there's a big difference between the 4 on the east side and the 2 on the west side.
I just wanna make sure, since we're thinking big,
Yep,
that.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We talked about that in our meetings, and everyone felt pretty comfortable with the 6 that we currently have out there. Does anybody have any questions at all? Yes, full plan too, we can kind of go through stuff, but I don't need to take up any more of your time either, so.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks, Dave.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the Yankton Trail Park Master Plan?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Jim and seconded by Todd. Roll call vote, please.
Lindquist?
Yes?
Stavinger?
Yes.
Sundley?
Yes.
Stegeman?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, we have one Memorial Park Bench donation.
Yeah, so we have one donation. The donor is Tara DeBelts in honor of Riley DeBelts. It would be a memorial bench with a plaque to be located at Great Bear by the fire pit. The donation or monetary gift value is $2,005, and staff recommends approval.
Okay. Any questions? I assume this has been presented to Dan and,
It has been, and
Yeah.
Dan is in agreement with it.
okay,
Yep.
all right, good. All right, any questions? No? All right, this will have to go on to the city council on their consent agenda, so today we are looking for a motion to recommend approval.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Rick and seconded by Mike, and a roll call vote.
Lindquist?
Yes.
Stavinger?
Yes.
Sundley?
Yes.
Stegeman?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll have Jackie move on to the Mary Jo Wagner Arboretum Management Agreement.
Okay, so you each should have a copy of the management agreement in front of you. So I'm just going to cover some of the highlights of the agreement, as not much has changed. But we currently have an agreement with the Arboretum Society for management of the Arboretum. That current agreement expires at the end of the year, so December 31st, and the current agreement does not have an extension option. Therefore, we do need to draft a new agreement. The new agreement we're proposing for you today is a one-year agreement versus the previous three-year agreement. And the reasoning for the one-year agreement is because the Arboretum is currently going through a comprehensive master plan. Within that master plan, we're expecting to see some, potential operational insights and impacts, as well as kind of that path going forward, what the Arboretum could potentially look like and what we would like to see within the agreement going forward. So because of that master plan, we are recommending just a one-year versus a three-year, and then re-looking at the agreement again at the end of next year. So that one-year agreement would be starting January 1st of 2020 and expiring December 31st of 2020. As it relates to the agreement in front of you, so again, very similar to what the current agreement is, just a few minor changes. The first one would be in section 2, the term. So again, changing it from a 3-year to a 1-year. The second would be in section 5 under scope of services. Within scope of services, it talks about a business plan requirement. Because a business plan is part of the comprehensive master plan, we're removing that out of the agreement because we will receive that with the master plan. And then finally, in section 21 under notices, we've updated the society's address and phone numbers, as those are more recent from the 3-year previous agreement. So again, minor changes as it relates to the agreement being proposed in front of you. And with that, staff does recommend approval, and I do have Diane Gildemaster here from the Arboretum to help answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Diane, do you have any comments you want to make right now?
No, thank you. Yes, I guess, we're in this point where the master plan is a lot of moving parts. It hasn't even really been approved. We just got the cost estimate recently. I don't even think it's come in front of your group yet. And then with the master plan that's coming in December, or the business plan, there's a lot of moving parts. So it's good to just kick it down the road a little bit and give us some more time. And then, yeah, we'll be back next year to ask for a little longer management agreement.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, does anybody have any questions? Any comments? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the Arboretum Management Agreement?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mike, seconded by Rick.
I think you want a motion to recommend it.
You want to recommend this will go to council? Okay, all right.
A resolution.
Okay. Shall we try again? Motion to recommend approval.
Motion to recommend.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, again, motion made by Mike and seconded by Rick. Roll call vote.
Lindquist,
Yes.
Stavenger,
Yes.
Sundley,
Yes.
Bigeman,
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, good. And one more Jackie item, and that is the 2020 Park Board meeting calendar.
Yeah, so the meeting calendar, excuse me, so what's in front of you would be the park board meetings as well as the draft committee meetings. So wanted to get this in front of you. As you remember, last year we did move our meetings from Tuesdays to Wednesdays. However, going for 2020, we are looking at maintaining the Wednesday schedule. So meetings are on the calendar for Wednesdays at 4 o'clock. As we move into December, we will be looking more into the committee meetings as well as the different committee groups. So those will all get approved as part of the December meeting, but just wanted this to be in front of you as it relates specifically to the park board meetings remaining on Wednesdays at 4 o'clock for 2020.
Does anybody have any comments they want to make regarding that? Okay, if not, is there a motion to approve the 2020 Park Board calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Rick, seconded by Todd, and we'll take a vote on that.
Lindquist,
Yes.
Stavenger,
Yes.
Sundley,
Yes.
Bigeman,
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Okay, great. That's all of our new business today, so we will move on to the next item, which is the report of the director.
Yes, thank you. Just a reminder, the guys have been out working on Wonderland down at Falls Park, and so on the 22nd will be the, don't have a lighting ceremony
I was
anymore.
gonna say,
but-
is that a little later than it traditionally has been?
I think the calendar falls a little later, but it's usually the Friday before Thanksgiving.
It is, okay.
So, yeah. So just heads up about that in case people ask you about that.
But no ceremony, because somebody did ask me that. They said,
Yeah,
"Is there-"
we used to do it, but we just kinda,
Flip the switch.
yeah,
Okay.
yes,
But there is an open house
Yeah.
celebration at Stansland's
right.
Oh, okay.
on the 23rd.
Yeah, so Stensland's is coordinating a kind of a, you know, chili and a variety of different things to try to help celebrate that.
Live music.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're having a little deal there
Have a
at that
kickoff
overlook.
celebration.
I also I was gonna try to catch David before he left, but, Stockwell Engineers, as part of this building in Bantams Park, submitted, this landscape, design, to their, association. And, this, Bantams Park and the landscaping around the city center building received an award through the landscape,
It was the Great Plains Land, ASLA, which is American Society of Landscape Architects Association.
yeah, so
What
it's-
area does that encompass
It's
geographically?
Yeah, it's the Great Plains chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects. It's North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska.
So it was a nice little award. We received some over the years for Veterans Park, McKinnon Park, some of the renovations that we've done there. So just kind of a nice little honor that they submitted on our behalf. So also wanted to share with you that we are ramping up for our reaccreditation. Jackie's leading that effort, and everybody on our mid-management team has got their standards. Rita's helped a ton being able to pull out that information together. The good news, it's a reaccreditation and it's not an initial accreditation, which is, you know, you got a lot of the pieces in place and now it's just updating everything. And so we're thinking maybe next spring, summer, the accreditation team will be back in town and doing their review of our standards that we have to submit to show the evidence compliance that we meet all those standards. So just know that that's coming our way. That'll be, if we get reaccredited, that'll mean that we'll be reaccredited for 15 years, starting in 2010. So reaccredit us through 2025. Also want to let you know that tentatively, you know how this weather around here is. Ice rinks are supposed to open tentatively December 20th, but it's always a crapshoot on whether or not we have water or whether we have ice, and you know it comes and goes because of the weather. So off and on, it seems like. So it's been a challenge historically, but we are ramping up for that as well. And then just a reminder, we're working on our, trying to get our final recommendations together from our consultant on a comprehensive plan. And so it's taken us a little longer, but we said, you know, if we've already spent a year on it, let's make sure that if we need another 30 days or 45 days, let's take the time to do it right and make sure we're very confident and solid in the recommendations that come out of that plan. So thanks for your patience on that. I know we'd hoped maybe November, December we'd have those to you, but you know, potentially next month we could actually have some of that stuff for you. So just know that, expect that to see that come here shortly. So that's all I have, unless you have questions of me or our staff.
Okay, thank you. No additional items have been added to our agenda after the deadline. No communications have been received to be read to the board. So is there any open board discussion? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Meeting adjourned.